BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, but today we're not going to talk about literature. I'm actually going to talk about some movies. So, they may not be as heavy as books, but they're still just as slippery. Although, they're easier to put down apparently. See, as much I've always read as a kid, but I was a big TV person growing up. I watched a lot of movies and TV shows growing up. And there were some stories that I got to the adaptation first before I actually read the book. So I thought I would do a two-parter where I talk about the movies and a couple of shows, and then I would talk about books. And specifically, I'm talking about all the horror books that I've read that are not Stephen King. And then maybe I'll, either in that part of that video, or maybe in another video, I will kind of update you on how my Stephen King project is going. It's very slow, but I have read a little bit. I don't know. I might wait, though, so that I have some more to update for you guys. I don't know. But I'm hoping this month I'll read another book from the Dark Tower series. But anyway, I don't know yet. I don't know if I'll do it or not, because I might not really. I don't know if I actually have anything a lot to update you guys with for the Stephen King project. I was hoping I would, but I don't know. Okay, let's get started. First, I'm going to talk about a movie that's not as popular. I don't think is as popular as a horror film, but I do enjoy it. Like, as one reviewer said, when I looked up this movie to see what other people thought about it, he said that was kind of like, you take it more as like the same feeling you get when you eat like sugar, like you eat sweets, or like cotton candy type or popcorn movie, where it's just kind of fun, but it's not very like enriching, or it doesn't have a lot of depth, and there are a lot of flaws to it, but just have fun with it. But it's a movie you just can have fun with it. And that, let's see if I can find it, is Dead Silence. So I know this movie has some flaws. Like, I like his comment about the main character, where he was so bland. The main character is such a bland guy that he didn't even remember his name. Although I actually do remember this, but that's because I was watching them. I had just watched the movie. So we have this young couple in their 20s, Jamie and Lisa. And they're hanging out in their apartment, he's trying to fix the sink, and they receive this mysterious package at their apartment door, and it's a ventriloquist dummy, and called Billy, and Lisa jokingly says, "Oh, Jamie, you got a baby," which you find out later she's actually pregnant, and that does play an important role in the story. And he's a little creeped out by it. It's unnerving, and she actually refers to a rhyme from their childhood in their hometown in Ravens Fair, that it says on the back, "Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls. If you see her in your dreams, be sure you never ever scream, or she'll rip your tongue out at the seams." Which, I love that kind of stuff, by the way. So Jamie leaves the apartment to pick up some dinner, and Melissa's in there kind of, messing around, just having fun and stuff, and she leaves the doll in their room. But then something strange happens. Everything slowly loses sound. Everything suddenly goes dead silent. And it does it very slowly, in a little creepy kind of way, an unsettling kind of way. And so she starts wandering around, get a little nervous. And then she goes into the room, and I don't remember if she noticed something about the dummy or not right away, but all of a sudden something attacks her, and it looks like and it looks pretty much like the dummy. It just is attacking her, and she gets, there's blood. She tries to escape, and she gets pulled back into the room. So we cut back to Jamie when Jamie gets back, and he discovers her dead body with her mouth hanging open and her tongue is gone. And of course, the police think because the apartment, she died in the apartment, there's no way to get in, it was locked and stuff, so the main police detective thinks that Jamie did it. And Jamie suspects knows there's more going on. He knows, of course, he didn't do it. Although, I feel like you could check the security tapes of the Chinese restaurant where he picked up the food. I mean, I'm sure they had security. I mean, they live in the city. There's more danger in the city, so I would think that they would have security tapes to prove that Jamie was there. But anyway, so he decides, he figures out that the box, the dummy, and the chest where the dummy was inside is from Raven's Ferry. So he heads back to his town, confronts his dad, who has a new young wife. And of course, you can kind of tell him and his dad, something's up with them. They don't have the best relationship. And they dismiss it because it's like, oh, it's just this fairy tale you were told as kids, an urban legend or whatever. And he noticed eventually he realized that the guy who owns the funeral parlor and his wife might know something. And so, and they kind of tell him the story that it is Mary Shaw that's might be involved. So I know that there's, like I said, yeah, there's a lot of issues. It's definitely not the best horror film, but I was entertained by it. I do find Ventriloquist Dummies really creepy. And I like how we, use more old-fashioned techniques for horror movies, like The Fog and this old-fashioned setting. I do also like how when he gets there, the town is completely bare, like there's no one in town, and it has similar, the color scheme is very autumnal, horror, scary autumnal, not the cozy kind of autumnal, but like horror, like a rainy night kind of look, like this bluish grayish hue to it, to the film. And this is actually the guy who directed Saw, the Saw franchise. I've never seen Saw, but I know he's, it actually says it on here. Yeah, it says from the writer and director of Saw. But it has the guy who played Suki Stackhouse' brother in the True Blood TV show. And the actress who plays Mary Shaw is from on Broadway. Actually, I think she's actually a really pretty lady. Trying to think of if there's anyone else. There's this one. The actor who plays the dad is kind of recognizable, but I don't remember his name. He's one of those actors I've seen, on and off, constantly. And one of the Wahlberg brothers is Donnie Wahlberg, I think. He's in it. He plays the police detective, which is funny because he was a detective in one of those crime shows that comes on TV during the day. I can't remember which one he's on, but I remember he's on that one of those as the detective too. It's kind of fun for me, with the creepy. I know, like I said, there's not a lot of development. I mean, now I think the whole relationship with his dad was they were trying to add some development, but we don't know a lot. But the guy whose review I watched said we don't know anything about Jamie. We know he doesn't have the best relationship with his dad. He comes from Raven's Fair, but we don't know what his job is, what his hopes and dreams are. You don't have to entirely dive deep into that kind of stuff, but it would be nice to get at least a little bit of information about who Jamie is as a character. But I still kind of have fun with this. Enough to where I wanted to buy it because was memorable for me. So there's that. Okay, now let's talk about something from my childhood that I still watch today. I got the Blu-ray of this back during one of our trips to convention. This is one of my this is actually a TV show. It's a horror anthology show, and it was rebooted. But I did not. The only thing I saw was the movie, but I have not watched the new show. I tried to watch it, but then it's a different setup. It has more of a serialized format where there's a story overall, and you can't really watch it. You can't just jump in the middle of it. You have to watch it in order to know what's going on. I mean, now I have done that before with some shows in the past, like where I've caught up. I got into it at the middle, and it did work. But I don't know. Maybe the plots were. Well, I don't know. I mean, granted, at the time I was paying attention more when I watched TV because I would be only watching TV. And nowadays I will be on YouTube and have the TV on in the background at the same time. So I'm not entirely paying attention. Even if it's something I am watching for the first time, I'll still do that unless I'm watching TV with like my parents or my friends or something. But that is Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Okay, so it started in the 90s. It was in the 90s all the way to, I think it might have been the mid 90s. All the way to the 2000s, early 2000s. Then it was brought back in 2009, and then they made it into a TV series again. And it's a horror anthology show where you have a group of kids meeting every night at a campfire in the middle of the woods and tell scary stories. And that's how they get initiated into the group. They have to tell a really good scary story, and the other members will vote. And our lead is the original lead of the Midnight Society was Gary, and this was his brother Tucker, who he took over when the show was brought back in the 2000s because they took a hiatus. And this is the group that was all the way to the end. They don't even include Stig in this picture. But they were known for, like, there were a handful of categories, and there were like 4 or 5 categories, at least for me. That's how I would label each story. Like, there were stories that were like ghost stories, which I loved. Stories about magic, another favorite. Like magic and fantastical elements. Those were my 2 favorite types of stories. But we also had those stories with the traditional monsters, or like different versions of monsters. Like there were some clown stories in there. And then you had the sci-fi type stories, like time travel and first contact with aliens and other dimensions. Those kinds of stories. These were, and they were meant for kids, so they were mostly family, safe. They were like a junior version of the Twilight Zone, where they were still family friendly, but scary enough to creep you out a little bit or make you unsettled at that age. And now there were only a few episodes that actually ended with a twist. Mostly, like a lot of the episodes ended happy, and our protagonists defeat the monster or whatever, or solve the problem. Now the ghost stories did seem a reviewer I watched where he reviewed all the episodes. All the episodes. Talked about a point that I do see where he's going with that, but is that he said the ghost stories were formulaic. They follow the same patterns as always. Like, character experienced had a tragic death. Like, there's love involved. Like, 2 friends that love each other, that care about each other, and then one of them dies, or like siblings lots, or like a parent or a child. Of course, the classic tragic romantic love is lost due to death, and but I kind of like them. I enjoy them, and some of them did try to be a little different. And now there are some of them that have like crossover elements to them, like some of the fantastical ones had a ghost story. Some of them, like there was the one comic book story they did that I feel like you could consider both science fiction and fantastical. Because like I associate science fiction stories as more science fiction. Like I associate comic book stories as more science fiction, and there was an involve of like microwaves and like that's how they involved in the story. So there was a little bit of science involved, but I can see where people are more prone to lean it towards the fantastical. Now, a lot of the members, they had like a type of story that they told. Like Gary and Tucker Tucker and Frank, this guy told a lot of adventurous stories. Gary's stories usually involved a lot of magic, and he told a lot of the magical stories with the fantastical elements. Samantha, and then before her, Kristen would tell like that's Samantha. I tell kind of stories with a romantic element, love, loss, and like a romanticism to them. And then Betty Ann told stories that were kind of more like about the macabre and grotesque type stories. Sometimes she told monster stories, sometimes she told stories with ghost elements. But there was often a mystery and intrigue to the story. A lot of her stories were my favorites. Hers and Frank's stories. Gary's stories were a lot of my favorites. And then Kiki kind of told stories where we kind of get the real world, where something otherworldly happens to the characters. And I like some of her stories, but not all of them. And like Betty Ann and Gary were probably the ones where I liked most of their stories, if not all of them. Like some of my favorites were probably The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. That was the comic book one. The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter. That is my all-time favorite one. The Tale of the Dream Girl. The Tale of Laughing in the Dark. The Tale of the Magician's Assistant. The Tale of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun. The Tale of the Night Shift. The Tale of the Dream Machine, The Tale of the Dream Girl. Can't think of what else. The Tale of Train Magic. And it was just, and they were just really fun and a little creepy. And some of them, and The Tale of the Dollmaker is another one I loved. It just had like. It was creepy. Like I said, it was still managed to be somewhat creepy, I think. And even today, some of them hold up, I think, as being a little creepy, a little unsettling. And some of them I wish they had more time to continue with. Like you always have the two parts in the beginning with the introduction of the story, and a lot of times members would bring props or something to symbolize the plot, the conflict, or the plot of the story. And then sometimes by the end of it, they would have a bit of, talking about the episode and drawing their conclusions from it. But, sometimes they would just, they would be like, okay, that's the end. The Tale of the Phantom Cab is another one. The Tale of Color's Treasure, Part 1 and Part 2. The Tale of the Midnight Ride. There's a lot that I like. But there are some that are, The Tale of Dead Man's Float. It's hard to pinpoint all my, there's so many that I absolutely love. But this is just, it was fun. And, I like now that I can watch it again, and there are, unfortunately, some of the effects are not that great. And, of course, they have to be careful with what they show on TV. That's why some of of The Tale of the Super Specs. That's another one I really liked. And that was one of the ones that had a surprise ending to it. But we had but they had to be careful with what they had in their stories. I think that's why most of their stories had to end happy. They only had a few that had twist to it. Like, you couldn't kill off kids or something, I feel like, in these stories. You had to be careful with what you include in these stories. And oh my god, some of the acting is downright cringeworthy, but some of it also pretty decent. Like, The Tale of the Dangerous Soup is another one of Frank's stories that is a favorite. That was pretty good acting. Oh, and that also includes one of the recurring characters, Dr. Vink. Just, like, blah, blah, blah. And then he's featured in Frank's story, so if it's Frank's telling the story, there's a good chance he's in there. Although there's a couple of Frank stories that he's not in, like The Tale of Train Magic. Like, he doesn't fit in the story, wouldn't fit in that story. And then, you have, although he was in Betty Ann, the actor was in Betty Ann's story as the carnival barker. That was, or at least he was dressed like a carnival barker. And then you had a character created by Gary called Mr. Sardo. No Mr. Accent on the dough. He was Gary's creation. He was fun too. He was like an amateur seller of, magic stuff, but he was just he didn't understand magic. He was terrible at it. But he cons people. He's always trying to sell things like the vomit. And sometimes actually the magic works out, which, even though he doesn't know that, sometimes it really works. And he tries to pass it off as, oh, I knew that would happen. Which, actually, one of my favorite episodes with him, other than the Super Specs, is The Tale of the Dark Dragon. That one was pretty good. I like that one. I was entertained by that one. Although that one, the acting was just okay in that one. The acting was a little cringy. But yeah, this is it's a fun anthology. Like I said, it was originally meant for kids, so, if you're an adult watching this, then you might be, don't, just try to relax and have a good time. Enjoy the ride, like, don't expect a whole lot from this. But, and just, like, remind yourself that it's not necessarily going to be the best quality, because it was made originally in the 90s. But it's pretty good, and I'm glad that someone did make this, like, created it, which I really appreciate that. I think, alright, so next we have, let's go for some of my witchy stories. I have a few witchy type movies that I think are perfect for this time of year. So first we have a dark comedy. A cult classic, a teen cult classic, and they try to remake it, and I don't think it did well, but that's usually, a lot of times that's the case, where people just can't, like, create a story that's as good as the original. And that is The Craft. And this is apparently a special edition version, so it has a lot more special features. But, it is basically about this girl and her dad her parents moved to this new town, and she becomes part of a group of girls there's all these rumors about them, and they're outcasts in their school, and they practice witchcraft. And they're actually kind of searching for someone to complete their coven, a fourth member. So they realize that the main that our new girl, Sarah, that she has an affinity for magic. So they think, oh, she could be perfect. But at first, even though it's kind of fun, it ends up going a little too far and get a little too dangerous, and she's not sure if she wants to pursue this, but the other girls won't let her get out, won't just let her leave. They decide to teach her a little bit of a lesson. This is really fun, a lot of teenage angst. It's also really creepy, and there's some scenes that are just so unsettling, so scary, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to these girls, even if you're not a Wiccan or don't practice magic. I think you can still relate to them and their angst and their struggles and their insecurities, and the temptation to use magic to solve your problems, especially if it's not like it's something that you can't easily get rid of. Like one of the girls, Neve Campbell's character, she has this, she has burns all over her back that, and her flesh is scarred. There's just a very dark but very fun story. Next is another classic. Now, it is based on a Roald Dahl book, and recently I've discovered there's some things about Roald Dahl that people do not like. And this is another one that was also remade, and I definitely get where, that's kind of annoying when they basically keep remaking classics. They don't ever do anything new or original. I can see why that gets irritating. But I'm always up for giving a remake a try, especially if it can attract a new audience. Especially if the original was made years ago. But now we have The Witches. Starring Anjelica Huston. And this is about this boy and his grandmother, and his parents died, so he lives with his grandmother, and then one day they decide to take a trip to, I can't remember where, to another country, and they end up at this really fancy hotel where apparently there are, actually, let me start over. Okay, so we have our main character, Luke, this little boy named Luke. His parents have passed away died in a car accident. So he ends up being taken care of by his grandmother, who tells him stories about witches and all the ways to be able to tell if you come into contact and have spotted it and if there's a witch. So one day they're taking a trip. And they end up leaving the country and staying in a hotel. I think they end up going back I think they're they live in the UK, and I think they are traveling to England, to America. And, and they end up staying at this really fancy, prestigious hotel. And while there, they learn that Luke learns there's a conference for witches who have come up with a plan to get rid of children altogether by giving them a special sweet treat that look like candy, but it has a potion in it that turns all the children into mice. And that's their main goal, is to get rid of children, to hunt down and get rid of children. Anjelica Huston, like I said earlier, she plays the Grand High Witch. And the Jim Henson Creature Shop is involved in all the special effects and the creation of the witch's look and everything, and the transformation scenes. Which, oh my god, that transformation scene still gives me nightmares to this day. When first they turn this little boy named Bruno that Luke befriends, and then Luke, the transformation scene when they turn them into mice. And with all the witches cackling and laughing maniacally as they watch this kid slowly his body morphing into a mouse is like so scary for me. So scary for me to this day. It's also, but I can see where it might make someone laugh because the transformation can be seen as I agree, can be seen as a bit funny. Like the way the body movement of the kid as his body is changing is kind of fun. It can be seen as funny. But it's so fun, and Angelica Houston just does such an amazing job. Now I haven't seen the remake with Anne Hathaway. But I would like to see it maybe this month I'll watch it just to see, because I was gonna watch it last year after I bought the original movie, but I haven't watched it yet. I think it's on Disney Plus though, so I will check it out just to see, and I'll probably like it because usually even though a lot of people have criticisms, I actually end up liking stuff like that. I mean, there might be a chance there are aspects of it I won't like. Mostly because I'm easy to please. And it doesn't bother me that much when they remake. I mean, I can see where it bothers other people because I can see where it's seen as lazy. But like I said, I don't mind it as much. I just look at it as new people give another group of actors a chance to tell the story and a new audience, especially if there's some dated elements in the original, which I don't know if they would consider these dated elements. There would be dated elements in this one. But next, we're gonna the other two witch movies I have a Halloween element to it, and aren't just scary. First, we have Practical Magic, and yes, the Practical Magic by Alice. This is based on the book by Alice Hoffman. And it is different. I know for sure because I did reread the book because I had read it years ago, and then I decided to reread it again, a couple years ago. And I didn't love it as much. Like, I remember enjoying the first one, but I don't know. I guess I was too much comparing it to the movie adaptation. But this is a story of... So this one isn't as... Actually, this one's not horror. This one's not as horror. And actually, The Craft is sort of horror, but it's a little different. Like, it's not like monsters and, something, chasing you. So this is more a combination of movies, the horror and just Halloween-esque movies that are great for this time of year. Not the cozy ones, though. Although this has a coziness. This does have a cozy element to it. It's not that super scary. I mean, there are some scary aspects, at least to me anyway, or like some creepy aspects. Maybe not super scary, but just like creepy. So you have two sisters, Sally and Jillian Owens. They live with their parents died. Their dad died due to a curse in the family that any man who dare live an Owens woman is gonna die. So when it happened to their dad, their mom, as they put it, died of a broken heart. So they live with their great aunts, their two aunts. And they just constantly experience bullying and mocking, making fun of, and because they're witches, and people are constantly afraid of them, so they put them down and bully them and tease them. So you have, and they just want to live their lives and escape that burden. So when they get older, Jillian leaves town, goes off, runs away with a boyfriend to get married, and then she basically goes through a series of all these different guys, and Sally stays home, and she's looking for true love and everything, and wants to have her, and ends up having her own, finding love with, and having her own family. And the two sisters are constantly writing to each other. And then the curse gets Sally's husband. So her and her two daughters end up living with the aunts. And Jillian, she ends up finding herself in an abusive relationship with this guy named Jimmy Angelo. And she contacts Sally and asks her to come rescue her. And they try to and they end up using a drug on him that ends up accidentally killing him. So they decide there is a spell in their family spell book that brings the dead back. So the girls Sally and Jillian try, unbeknownst to their aunts, to use the spell, but it kind of does not get the kind of results they expected. And they end up being haunted by Jimmy Angelo. This is really fun. It's whimsical, but there is a creepiness to it. It's a story about these two sisters and their bond, despite how different they are and how much they exasperate and frustrate each other. There's, of course, they're witches, so there's that. And it's just a really fun and just a really fun story. It is different from the original novel that it was based on. And it's just, it has Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman and Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest. Aidan Quinn, I think his name is. And it ends on Halloween, actually. It ends on Halloween. And also it has like a seaside town kind of setting, so like a New England town setting, which, they live near the ocean, the ocean, and it's just really fun. I've always loved their house. I always want to live in their house or go visit it. I think that their house is really cool. Next, like, either like those houses or like a Victorian mansion. Those are my favorite types of houses. Or cozy cottage type houses too are also a favorite. So like I said, it does end on Halloween. It's just like such a it's very like creepy, and there's a little bit of creepiness, but it's also very cozy and fun. Okay, let's talk about another classic, one that is recently just got a sequel. It actually got a book sequel a few years ago, and now it's getting a sequel to the movie itself, which will be coming out in a couple days. And that is Hocus Pocus. It's a classic. It's a must watch. It's a must watch for this time of year. The whole movie takes place on Halloween. So you have these famous Sanderson sisters, and they were hung after being accused of trying to steal the life of this little girl, and all the little girls of the town of Salem. And they end up getting hung for that crime. And meanwhile, the only person protecting people from bringing these witches back is this young man who they turned into a cat, the older brother of the little girl whose life they stole. So there's this whole thing about how, like, they made a promise that a virgin must light the black flame candle, and that will bring them back to life, back from the dead, and return to this realm. So in the present day, you have these two, again, siblings, Max and Danny. They have just moved here with their parents, and Max isn't too into the living here. It's too small of a town for him. They used to live in LA. He thinks Halloween is stupid, and it was a holiday invented by the candy companies. And although, I think every holiday you can make that argument, there's a lot of holidays where you couldn't make that argument, but most of them were invented first, for a reason, not just to make, it's just now a lot of people, they're commercialized. But the original intent was not that. And he is actually told off for that, told that by this girl. He ends up liking Allison. So on All Hallows Eve, when he's taking Danny, his sister, trick-or-treating, they end up crossing paths with Allison. And her mom runs the Sanderson House Museum. And they decide, because, you know, he's like, make a believer out of me, and also to impress Allison, he's like, let's go and, you know, go visit this museum. And he is messing around, despite the fact that the cat tries to the cat Binks tries to stop him, and he decides to light the black flame candle, and it works, and the witches are brought back from the dead. And there's, you know, and I love that throughout the the rest of the night, there's this whole ongoing joke about him being a virgin, because he was able to bring them back. And it's basically them trying to escape these witches as they hunt them down and try to use the magic potion, get their book back, because he ends up stealing, because Binks, who reveals that he can talk, gets them to steal the book, and they have to escape. It's fun, it's silly, it's, you know, it takes place on Halloween night, and there's a wholesomeness to it. There's the sweetness of the relationship between the siblings, you know, Binks' devotion to his sister Emily is very heartbreaking. I mean, I cry at the end, is all I'm gonna say. And, you know, like, Max and Danny's bond as siblings is very sweet, even though they annoy each other and drive each other crazy. Like Danny had to scream and have a temper tantrum just to get her parents to force Max to take her trick-or-treating. Because he was not in the mood. And it's just fun. It's working. There's just something magical about this story. I mean, there's a reason, if you have not watched this, there's a reason people love this story so much. And then, when you're done watching the original, you can watch the sequel that is coming to Disney Plus in a few days. And with all three of the original actresses, you know. Now, I don't know if any of the actors who played the main kids in the story, are gonna make cameos. I think it'd be cool if they did. But who knows? I don't know if they might not be able to get them. I have to look it up and see. I mean, I think they should make cameos. Like, I think that'll be really fun to see. And also, like, the trio of these women, their personalities mesh so well together. You have, you know, Bette Midler plays Winifred Sanderson, who's the bossy, like, know-it-all lead of the trio, who, like, always, you know, makes it look like it's the fault of her sisters when things go wrong. And like there's one point where Max or Danny, one of them calls them ugly, like ugly broads or something, and Winifred's like, sisters, did you hear what he called you? And then you have the other two who are kind of a little dumb. Like, Mary, who's played by Kathy and Jimmy, she's a little smarter. She's a little bit smarter. She's trying the people pleaser, you know, always trying to please Winifred, and, like, she looks up to her probably, and just is like, I mean, what I would love is to see, you know, about their past, what they were like when they were young women. I think that would be kind of fun, but maybe that would be too much, and it won't be as good. But, and, like, and then we have, and then we have Sarah, who's probably the most dumb between the three of them. She's kind of ditzy. She sometimes actually says something that really, like, smart, or, like, there's, you know, she might remember something, and then while the others just dismiss it as her saying stupid stuff. And, she's kind of like, like I said, she's kind of the ditzy one, you know, the one who's a little, but she's also the flirty one, remember, they were kind of a hoe. And she also is known for having this beautiful singing voice that can put you under the spell of their spell. They all kind of have that gift to, like, use their singing voice to lure you to them, put them under your spell. There's this infamous "I Put a Spell on You" performance. I absolutely love that. But yeah, this is a classic. Halloween classic. I have a few over here, Halloween classics. And I will come back to there's two more that I feel like are Halloween classics that I think you should. Okay. Dang it. Next we have, okay, this was a remake. I never saw the original, and a lot of people prefer the original, I think. But I love this. I thought this was great. And then it's Fright Night. And actually, the guy who played the original, vampire in this movie, Jerry, he has a cameo in this. In this movie, he's actually ends up being a victim, which I really like. I like how when they remake, they decide to years later, 10, 20 years later, they decide to remake a classic, and they ask the actor if they're still available and if they're still here and they're still alive, if they can make a cameo, play like a small part. I really like that, and it's funny because he's a victim when he used to be the vampire in the original, and I'm trying to think if there was another time where they did that. Another movie where they had that was a remake, and they had one of the original actor from the original movie play a small role, like a victim or something. So, so we have our main character is, let's see, I'm trying to think of his name. Charlie. It's him and his mom, his dad. I don't know what happens to his dad, but they move to a small town in Nevada outside of Las Vegas. And it turns out that a vampire is living next door. And they don't, and when Charlie figures out, he tries to, and it's basically teenage boy trying to fight a vampire and trying to protect his mom and his girlfriend, and it has a lot of the great elements of vampire movies, I think. A lot of action, some sexy times, and it has like some dark comedy to it. Charlie ends up realizing he needs help, so he goes to this local illusionist, Peter Vincent, who supposedly knows how to fight vampires. Now I think he's a regular. He's not an illusionist in the original story. I don't think. Well, maybe he is. I don't know. I have to double check, or you guys, if you're interested, you can double check. But he's played by actually David Tennant in this version. And Colin Farrell plays Jerry. And it's funny. Like I said, there's a lot of dark comedy. I like Peter Vincent's character. He's the most entertaining. And actually, I had a friend on YouTube or on Facebook before I kind of stepped away from Facebook. She loved this movie. She was a big fan of David Tennant, and she actually wrote a fan fiction where she gave Peter Vincent a love interest. She did a pretty good job. I enjoyed it. I mean, there were some, flaws. So there were some critiques I had to the story, but it was still a really fun. I think it was called Magic Man or something. So if you're ever on fanfiction.net and you like this movie, check out there's this check out the fanfiction. Like I said, I think it's called Magic Man or something, the first one, because she wrote a few one shots, like basically short stories, in the one long novel. But it's really fun. A lot of great vampire elements to it. I think Colin Farrell makes a great vampire, very sexy, and wearing a sexy and modern vampire. Don't worry, no vampire sparkle. It's actually more scary vampires, like how vampires, quote unquote, should be. Okay. Sorry, just got interrupted. And it's really fun, and it does star the late Anton Yelchin, which is really sad what happened to him. He had such potential as an actor, but sadly he passed. I think he got into a car accident or something, got hit by a car, or was it a car accident or something? I don't know. I don't even know if drinking was involved or anything like that, but he died too young. Anyway, this is definitely fun for vampire fans. Like I said, of course, you might prefer the original. But I personally like this, and granted, but I've not seen the original. I have I have no attachment to the original. Maybe I'll watch it one day if I see it on, Sci-Fi or something. I might watch it. Um, but there are some differences. Like his girlfriend is very different. She's a little more sexy in the movie and a little more like confident. While in the original, like I think her character is a little more pure and virginal and innocent in the original. Like, now I don't agree with the criticism of her character. I don't think she was the slut. They call her slut, but I mean, if you haven't watched and you're in, I mean, of course you can agree to disagree. I mean, maybe you think she's a slut, but I never thought she was a slut. I think she was just a little more sexually active, but not to the point of sleeping around. I think she's just very mature. But either way, I enjoyed this. Again, I haven't seen the original, so, but I probably would still prefer this one. Okay, next is one that's technically not a Halloween-esque movie, but I think it's a great movie to watch this time of year, and it's a musical, so musicals aren't your thing, you might not like it. Although I personally think it's one of those musicals that people could still enjoy. The music is really cool. It's Stephen Sondheim, I think. Let me see, is this? Yes, Stephen Sondheim, and then is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This is about a guy who he was happily married. He was a barber in London, and then because this judge lust after his wife, he has Benjamin Barker's his name, and he has him framed, and he ends up in the asylum and arrested, and ends up in an asylum, I think. And so it's many, many years later, and he comes back, and he's a little unstable and full of a lot of rage, and he decides he wants to seek revenge on the judge who had him put in jail. And he believes he is told that his wife is dead, and by this woman who owns a meat pie little shop, and she kind of had a little crush on Benjamin Barker, and she ends up recognizing him and she's the one who tells him his wife is dead, and she kind of attaches herself to him a little bit and tries to help him out, get readjusted, and they end up coming up with this plan to get revenge on the community by putting everybody, the rich and the elite, and the supposedly pious people, but they're not really by killing them and putting them into meat pies. And Sweeney Todd, as Benjamin Barker now goes by, how they set up is he pretends that he's gonna shave them, give them a shave. They only go after men. And then he cuts their throat instead and sends them down to the basement where the meat grinder is, and she chops them up and puts them in a meat grinder. And it's really fun and spooky and a little creepy. It has, the traditional gothic elements of a great Tim Burton film. It is a musical, so like I said, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, because I know a lot of people just can't get into musicals and they find them like annoying, or just they can't connect with them because the idea of people breaking out into song is just a little too weird for them. And of course, we have great performances by Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, who his singing was pretty good. It was pretty amazing. And I want to say he was in a band at one. He was in a band once before he was acting when he was a young man. He has a very gruff, scratchy sounding voice, which I really enjoy. And it has Jamie Campbell Bower is in it, as well as this young man who Sweeney Todd befriends when he's coming back to London. And actually, Jamie Cameron Bower's character ends up becoming obsessed, coincidentally, with Sweeney Todd's daughter, who the judge has locked up in his house. And he ends up lusting after her the way that he lusted after her mom. So it's really gross and really creepy, and really weird and creepy. So you don't feel sorry for him later on. And he is actually played by, the guy, the famous British actor that he played Snape. I can't think of his name. I cannot believe I can't think of his name. They're him and another Harry Potter actor is in it as well. Timothy Spall, who was introduced in Prisoner of Azkaban, and like I said, I cannot remember his name. Let's see if let me see if I can find it. Sacha Baron Cohen is in it. Alan Rickman. He plays the judge. He does creepy. He does sleazy and creepy, and guys are just assholes really well. And the music is the kind of musical where the music is just very intense and exciting and just nail biting, and it's just really, and it's also very powerful music for me. Like I said, I get that musicals are not for everybody, but I think this is great to be watching, especially with the color palette it has and the fact that it involves murder, and it's like great. And I think it's a fun musical to be watching like on a stormy night or something. But yeah, so that's the only thing, is it is a musical, so, and I know not everyone loves musicals. Okay, so let's talk about I'm going to talk about both versions of it that I recently watched, both of them. I'm trying to get the ones that aren't Halloween related horror movies. I wanted to watch those in September, so I got through a lot of those. So this next one is based on a Stephen King book, actually. This is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, a long one. And if you don't want to read the book because it's super long, because he does have some long ass books, you can watch the adaptation. So you have two options. You have either the original 1990 version, or the version that started with part 1 in 2019, and then this one came out in, let's see if I can find the date. I cannot find the dates. Let's see. I want to say 2020 or 21 is when this one came out. Part 2 came out. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. So we need... Oh, no. This is part 1. Never mind. So, it's the story about this town of Derry, Maine, which most Stephen King's stories are set in Maine. And I think this town, Derry, is based on an actual town in Maine that he grew up in. And the town has been haunted and cursed by this monster that is made up of deadlights, but it also takes on different forms. Its favorite form is a clown, and it basically feeds off your fear. It can take on the form of whatever you're most afraid of and traumatize you, and then it will eat you. And its favorite food is kids, because kids are easier to, because adults' biggest fears are not paying the bills on time, or losing a child, or so it's hard to take a physical manifestation of that. Although, you could take on the form of a child. You could take on the form of a child and, have them yelling at the parents like he did to, with Georgie and everything. But, and so, after going after Georgie Denbrough, Georgie's older brother becomes obsessed with seeking revenge on whatever killed his brother. And his friends help him, and he has help him defeat his friends who are also have been traumatized by it, and go and come together, and they're the only ones who can fight it. They are also known as the Losers Club because they are outcasts in their community. They each have something about them that gives reason for people to bully them. And like Bill has a stutter, and then his brother and everything. You have Beverly Marsh, who she's very poor. Her dad's the janitor, and there's all these rumors about her reputation, like she's had sex at a very early age apparently, and like her mom dies, and I think there's implications that her dad has raped her. And you have Eddie Katzbach, who's a mama's boy. He's asthmatic. He's a little OCD. He has OCD, I think. And then you have like Richie Tozier, who kind of uses jokes as his defense mechanism. He always tends to put his foot in his mouth, and actually, which I'm guessing that the kid that Finn Wolfhard got this from the book, or was told this, that he kind of is ignored by his parents. And I wish I remember some of the other stuff he said, because I watched an interview recently, where he talked about the parents, Richie's parents. Then you have Mike, who is the only him and his family are the only black family in town, and this is set in the 50s, so it's 10 times, the racism is 10 times worse. It's not accepted at all. And, so he constantly experiences racism and bullying from all the white kids in his community. And then you have Stanley. He is Jewish, so he's kind of made fun for his Jewish religion. And I think that's all. Oh, and Ben, I can't believe I forgot Ben, because he's my favorite. He is a fat kid. And he's bullied constantly for that. He has a crush on Beverly, who likes Bill. But he's such a sweet boy. He loves to read, and as Beverly puts it, he has the heart of a poet. And he's probably my favorite, if I had to pick a favorite. Although I really like the version of Eddie that was created in this version. So we have the 1990 was a mini series with John Ritter, Tim Reed, Richard Thomas, and in this one, Tim Curry plays Pennywise, the monster, the clown monster, and which I think everybody still is a little biased to his version because he always puts on such a great show. He is so good. He's funny, but he's also creepy. He just does such a great job, and the makeup is fantastic on him. Like, you have to, like, now if you really actually look, you can see Tim Curry in the makeup, but and it's just he does such a great job. So I get it; it's hard to compete with him. And now the biggest difference between these two, I think, is like, other than the casting, first of all, the kids do a lot better in this one. Although the actor who played young Bill in this version does a pretty good performance, especially when he's like talking, and talking to the world, to the sky, and talking a lot and saying, trying to talk to the monster and be like, "You killed my brother George, you bastard," that whole, and asking for someone to help him. And it's a very heartbreaking scene, and he did a really good job with that one. But this one makes me cry more. This version makes me more emotional, I think. And it's R-rated, so we do get a lot more gore in this one, and they could be a little darker with the story, with the horror elements. And I think it's hard to compete with Tim Curry, but I think Bill Skarsgård did a really amazing, brilliant job as Pennywise. It's a different performance. And I think it's just as good. I think I feel like you shouldn't compare. I think it's hard to compare them, but it's just natural that you do, because I compare them too. And I think it's hard to decide, but part of me, I kind of lean more towards this version of Pennywise, but I still love this version too. I like the kids acting better in this one. The adult acting is about the same in both of these. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this one is a little more over the top, but it's kind of hard to find the balance in horror when not to be over the top, but also, be really authentic with, your fear, but because you don't know. You don't know what you're gonna do. Actually, I think I kind of like John Ritter's version of Ben as an adult in this one than this guy. What is his name? I cannot remember his name. And they did a really good job with the casting. Like, I might have to look again. It's hard for me to tell with this one, but they really do look like young versions of the adult actors in the sequel. Like, they did a really good job. And my favorites in this version are probably Richie and Eddie, especially Eddie. I love their performances. Like, he does a really good job at capturing what was created in the first movie. With the actor who played Eddie, and of course Finn Wolfhard and Bill Hader doing amazing. And I like that Bill Hader was cast in this movie, because it's kind of fun to see him, this one, because I've only seen him do comedy. Like, it's fun to see, although I did see him do one drama with Kristen Wiig playing his sister, and I think he's actually, like, I don't know if he's a cross-dresser or transgender or just gay. I mean, I think he does dress up as a woman in this movie, so in that movie, not this one. Although he ends up being, they had Richie be the one who was gay. Now, in this version, there are implications that maybe Eddie is gay, which I never really thought about until, someone pointed out to me. I can see where Eddie gets off as a little more feminine in this one. This one, he's a little more, neurotic, but masculine, while Richie is the gay character in the story, which there's a lot of things in here. Like I said, there's racism, of course, because the story, it's in the 80s, unlike this one, which was in the 50s, but there was still, sadly, racism in the world. I mean, and there's also homophobia in this one. And it's very hard to watch it, and it just gets me so angry when I see that, but you're also supposed to not like the character. Like, and I did like how this one included, they don't include that scene, but how the book starts, I don't know if it's the first scene or the first scene is with the Losers Club, or like Bill's little brother, Georgie, but this one does include the scene in the beginning of the book with the character of Adrian Mellon, and him and his boyfriend are hanging out at the carnival, and then they get harassed and bullied and beat the shit out of by these bullies, and then Adrian ends up being thrown in the river, and while his boyfriend is trying to rescue him, Pennywise shows up and eats him. So I'm kind of glad they included that, because I think it's an important scene. It's a horrifying scene, but I think it's something that needs to be included. But obviously, I get why they wouldn't include this in this version. The world was not ready for a scene like that in this version. So yeah, basically, I'm talking about all the stuff that I talked about in my previous video where I compared the two versions. I'm talking about a lot of that stuff. So that one, a lot of the stuff I say is in that video, and I still, to this day, I still want to do a video where I talk about the book versus the adaptations, but it's such a long book. Like, thankfully I have the book right here. Here's the book. So this is which I love this edition. Like, there is a movie tie-in edition, which I've been meaning to pick this one up. I'm only on chapter 5, and this is a reread. I read this book years ago, and it still took me years to read. This is huge. Look at how long, this is over 1,000 pages. But I absolutely love this book. Now, I know there's the infamous scene that, people cannot, it ruins their appeal of the book, but this one scene that you're like, King, why the hell did you put that in there? It's a disturbing scene, and I agree, but I still love this book. And you will never see that scene in The Adaptation. And if you read the book, or, you will know what I'm talking about. Or at least ask people. If you're curious, ask people around, what the infamous scene is. And as, a warning to make you decide if you want to check this out or not. If that scene is enough for you not to be in, enough for you not to decide not to check this book out, then it's fine. Then okay. Like I said, I still love it, but yeah, I think, why did he put that scene in there? It should not be in there at all, but he did, so I can't change that. But it's not going to take away my love for this book. So, this story. So, and I could talk about the book because it's not going to be on my other video where I talk about horror books. But, I feel like I should, I'm still conflicted what books I want to bring with me. Because we'll be going on a vacation soon. So I don't know if I want to bring, just, Halloween-esque book, spooky type books, or if I want to bring one of my Victober reads. But anyway, okay, now let's talk about some other, well, I guess I do have another Halloween-esque story over here, but I will talk about that in a minute. Next, we have some other classic horror, 2 haunted house stories, and then a, monster kind of, first time a classic. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, there are some differences to Dracula's novel, Bram Stoker's novel, versus this movie. They actually have, Mina Harker and Dracula have a romantic entanglement, while in the original book, she's just one of his victims, and then, of course, she's being filled with the, vampire venom, so, of course, she's all lusty after Dracula. But, I don't know if I should tell you, what this is about, because it's, most people probably know what it's about. Well, I'm going to assume you guys know what Dracula's about. It's really great. It stars Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, and a young Keanu Reeves. That's just the only thing I don't like about this movie is Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. I know, part of me is what was the director thinking, but then another part is well, actually, I kind of know what the director was thinking. He was young and hot, and on the behind the scenes featurette, they were saying how they wanted a young, hot cast. The director did, so, but originally it was Johnny Depp, which I don't know, it's hard for me to picture him now but I would have loved to seen him as Jonathan Harker. I think that would have been really cool. But he has been in a vampire movie now. He was in the Dark Shadows movie remake, which, that's weird. What would you call that? Because it was a remake of a TV show, but it was a movie. So I don't know what you would call that. But anyway, Gary Oldman plays Dracula. Like I said, it's in Dracula, and Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder are pretty hot together, and pretty good chemistry, I think. I can't remember if I heard that they liked each other or not, but I remember there was a bit of difficulty with Gary Oldman working in the director. He wanted to do his own thing, which, yeah, I guess I don't like his hair when he's all old and stuff. I don't know, his hair is weird and stuff, but I guess he has so much hair that he has to put it up like this. But I always thought, I couldn't, when I first looked at it, I couldn't tell that it was hair. It was his hair. I always thought that was a little ridiculous. But, it also has, Carrie Elwes, And then there's two other actors. Let me see if I can find their name. Oh, Anthony Hopkins plays Van Helsing. Francis Ford Coppola, that's the director. Okay, I don't remember who else is in it, but it is some, a few well-known actors at the time. But it's dark, it's very fun. It is very stylized. Like, the beginning is a little different. The beginning is a bit strange. Like, how they tell they do the prologue is a little weird, and I don't know if everybody would love it, but it's also, like, something, it's a cult classic, this one, and I think it's one of those ones that you just gotta, like, go with it. Enjoy the ride. And, there's some sexy times in this, because, of course, we're dealing with vampires here. I think it's pretty close to the book, I think. It's just, there's aspects of it that are a little bit, that are different from the book. Like I said, Mina Harker and Dracula actually being lovers. Like, she's the reincarnation of his wife, Elisabetta, who committed suicide after she was led to believe that he died in battle. The makeup effects is really good. Like, it's just it's a very stylized film. But, it's a great classic Dracula. Okay, now the next one is, we have The Raven, which is a kind of one of those stories where, where it takes a famous person and kind of puts them in a situation that is, of a speculation of something that might have happened to them. I'm trying to think if there was another example of this, where they took a famous person who did something like write or something, or paint, and it's like, oh, that's right, Becoming Jane, it was kind of a similar idea, where they took her story of her, like, romancing, her liaison, or her little, her relationship with this guy, Tom Lefroy, and, speculation, was their story passionate or romantic, and thinking, what if this happened? And I think it's kind of like that, where what if this happened? Like, another, way to explain is the Doctor Who episode with the, Agatha Christie, where, Donna is like, well, it's not like, like Charles Dickens is surrounded by ghosts or something, and, not really surrounded by ghosts, and, like, so it's kind of like one of those where you have the actual famous person is actually having to deal with stuff that he talks about or he does. Like, he's, in this case, Poe, and he's actually surrounded by mystery and murder and, so, like, he is right now kind of not as successful as he would like to be, and, these murders are happening where people are killed in a way that is inspired by his works, by Poe's works. And so the police detective, this takes place in America, he decides to use Poe, once he finds out that he's not guilty, to help him determine what the killer's next move is. And what ends up happening is that his girlfriend, Poe's girlfriend, the woman he intends to marry, ends up being kidnapped. And, of course, her father ends up blaming Poe because he doesn't like him. And they have to get to her before she dies. It's thrilling, it's exciting. It's about Edgar Allan Poe, so it's great to, there's a scary element to it, like, with not knowing, and very creative ways to kill people. And I think John Cusack does a pretty good job, and, like, look at him, he does kind of, I can see where he kind of looks like Poe. Oh, I never really looked at the cover before. All the, what's in the background. But, and it's just, it's fun, It's kind of fun to speculate, maybe this could have happened to Poe. And of course, pays compliment to all his works and stuff, plays homage to his beautiful stories. But yeah, if you are a fan of Edgar Allan Poe, please check out this movie. I think you would enjoy it. Like I said, it's not like a biopic or a biography type movie. It's just kind of a speculation type movie where, what if this happened to this person? Okay, I got two more. So we got two haunted house stories. So first we have Crimson Peak. And this is such a gothic story, like a very gothic haunted house story. It's by Guillermo del Toro, the director. It stars Mia Wasikowska. Sorry, I still don't. I have to hear her name pronounced out loud. Jessica Chastain and Tom Hiddleston, Charlie Hunnam, and Jim Beaver from Supernatural plays a small part as Mia's dad. I should say Edith Cushing's dad. So we have our main character, Edith, and she wants to be a writer, but of course this is during the time where women being writers or having jobs that are seen only for men is frowned upon, and she needs to get married. It's made to be a bigger deal more important for her to get married, find a husband, get married. Now, what I really loved about her father is he was very supportive of her. Yes, he wanted her to get married, but he also was supportive of her wanting to have a career. And he wanted her to get married, and he was pushing this one guy on her childhood friend, but he also didn't push her too much. And this English baron shows up wanting to present his machine that has to do with using red clay, showing up, and he crosses paths with Edith and is impressed by her work. And after making a bad impression on her father, who is supposed to, he presents his machine to, he ends up liking her instead, but he also ends up liking her. And interestingly enough, her friend Alan, the guy that her father wants her to marry, his sister has set her sights on Mr. Sharp, on Baron Sharp. And it does not end well, though. I think she got off easy. She got off lucky. Because, of course, things do not work out as well as Edith hoped. Because her father tries to scare him, Thomas, and his sister, Lucille, away. But they have a plan. Thomas needs to marry Edith. Or someone else. So that eventually, they can claim her inheritance. They can kill her off and claim her inheritance. So he has his sights set on Edith. And her father ends up getting brutally murdered, but Edith doesn't find out until Thomas, who was encouraged by her father to break it off with her and pretend like he didn't care, writes a letter of apology, and they get back together, and she agrees to marry him because she has fallen in love with him, and he takes her to England after she deals with the death of her father. And this house is essentially falling apart. The red clay is seeping through. There's a big giant hole in the building and the roof, and the sister Lucille is not very, there's a lot of tension between her and Edith. They do not like it. There's like Edith tries to be a good sister-in-law, but Lucille is not so nice. And the house is being haunted, and she's warned, and these ghosts try to explain to her what's really going on. I think the ghost effect is really cool, very different. Like, it's a very different ghost effect, and as someone else pointed out in their review, what's really cool is the ghosts aren't the scary ones. You find out later they're not the threat. They seem like the threat throughout most of the movie, but eventually what's really cool is you find that they're not the problem. They're not the scary thing. And of course I like that Edith sees ghosts. Like, we don't have enough stories with ghost whisperers in it. And I say ghost whisperer because, the show Ghost Whisperer. We don't have, like, we have, that show, and then we have, like, Sixth Sense. But we don't have, I want to see more ghost stories with characters that see and speak to ghosts. I think that's a really fun concept to explore. And, oh my god, the costumes are so beautiful and exquisite, like, especially the dresses that Jessica Chastain and Mia wear are just so beautiful. And there's a bunch of behind the scenes where they talk about the symbolism of their dresses, the clothes they wear. Like, there's a whole feature in the back that really talks about, like, their costumes and how they're the symbolism of them. And, like, and oh my god, it's so adorable because, like, Tom Hiddleston, he does one of the special features, and he's just, like, really into the architecture, and he talks about the little details that you don't notice right away, that you might not notice on the first time you watch it, or if you're not completely paying attention, like I do. And it's just so cute how nerdy he gets about that kind of stuff. And but oh my god, her father's death is just so hard to watch. It's just so blunt and gloomy. Like, the murderer bangs her father's face on the porcelain sink, like, really hard. So, like, she really that part just so hard to watch. It looks so painful. And I'm curious how they knew it, but of course Jim Beaver is used to that, that kind of stuff, which having worked on Supernatural. Which I'm wondering if he did that after Supernatural. I have to double check on when this, when he left the show. Because his character does killed off. Which I just noticed on this. That is really cool. I never really looked at this, but there's, like, if you can tell, there's there's this red shadow shaped on the DVD on the back here that looks like what the symbols that they represent. That is cool. I did not notice that. Which you could really discuss this movie, like some of the symbolism and everything. You could really dive deep into this movie. There is incest, just so you know. There's incest in the movie. And I really like Mia. I know not everybody loves Mia and everything as an actress, but I think she's really great. She does a really good job in, I also liked her in the Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland as well. And I think she was perfect as Jane in the 2011 adaptation. But yeah, this is great to be and Jessica Chastain, of course, is a great performance. Like I said, I think this is just perfect for this time here. Okay, and then we have another Stephen King based. Now, he actually wrote the screenplay for this, but this was not a novel. But we have Rose Red by Stephen King. This is a haunted house story that was a miniseries put on by ABC. So, and they wanted someone to write a really good haunted house story. So, who better than Stephen King, who wrote The Shining? It's not a haunted house, but it is a haunted hotel. So you have this house in Seattle, like, yeah, it does not take place in Maine, in Seattle, and Rose Red, which was built in the early 1900s by John Rimbauer for his young bride Ellen Rimbauer. Ellen. And while they were honeymooning in Africa, the house was being built, and from the beginning, this house had a lot of weird stuff happening to. Like, a lot of the workers had some weird freak accidents, like the ground, like one of them got really mad and went a little mad, shot one of the foremen, but he didn't remember doing it. You had one guy who choked on a piece of apple, and then one guy a fallen sheet glass basically fell on him, cut him in half, and so a lot of weird stuff. And then the house has a reputation for taking the women and killing the men. And this parapsychologist, Joyce Reardon, is obsessed with this house. And she already struggles with people not believing in the paranormal and being mocked for it. And the head of her department, Professor Miller, wants to get her fired and thinks she's batshit crazy. And she decides to prove it's real by getting permission from the latest heir to the house, Stephen Rimbauer, who she's actually dating, to spend the weekend in the house for a period of time, for 6, or during the weekend. And she gathers together a bunch of psychics like her, which, by the way, I have been thinking about doing a video where I talk about some of the characters in this miniseries, particularly Emery Waterman, who has some similarities to Eddie Kaspbrak from It. They have very different personalities, but they have a similar situation in their that they are in. Not this part, but they're both raised by their mothers and are mama's boys, but their personalities are very different from each other. And I kind of want to do a video where I talk about them. And so you have these groups. You have Emery, who is precognitive or postcognitive. He can see the past. He's a mama's boy, very cranky and bitter, and very cynical. And then you have Kathy, who she's a Christian, but she also is an automatic writer. She's an impulsive quitter, apparently, and she's a very just sweet person. And then you have Nick, who's one of my favorite characters. And I think he gets premonitions, or he sees visions or something, but he also is a mind reader. He's telepathic. And he's probably the most charming of the group. Like, I see him being that professor that you kind of are infatuated with, but he also challenges you. And then you have Vic, he's this older man. I think he has a heart condition or something, or arthritis or something. He takes this medication. He's also very charming and friendly, but but we don't know a lot about him. And he's precognitive. And then you have Pam, who she's quiet. She's very mousy kind of character. Although apparently, according to Emery's mom, she's a slut. She looks like a slut. And then you have Pam Asbury, and then the most important character to Joyce is Annie. And Annie she is autistic, she's telekinetic, she has a lot of strong psychic energy, and Joyce wants to bring her to the house because she thinks Annie can wake up the spirits of the house. And her parents aren't sure. Her parents don't want her to go, particularly her dad doesn't want her to go, but eventually she's able to go. And as long as her older sister Rachel comes along. And then we have Steve Rimbauer, who's the heir of the household, Um, and I like to think that he and Rachel got together later on. Um, but it's so scary and terrifying. Yes, you see the ghost, but it's another very creative approach to the ghost. Like, they're vampire like, but they have a zombie element to them as well, I think. Um, they're just downright scary. And I love ghost stories where you get the history of the ghost. You get this information about the ghost and stuff, but they give it to you not in one big info dump, but they just give you each of the stories piece by piece, until you get the whole picture of these ghosts. And it also is very much explores, a woman being done wrong by her husband because he's a bastard. This young woman who had her life ahead of her, and she ends up marrying the wrong guy. Who ends up he's an oil tycoon, and he also has a lot of girlfriends, even though he's married. And our one friend is this woman Sukina, who took care of her when she was in Africa because she got really sick in Africa, and he kind of abandoned her. So she brings Sukina with them, and they become very close, like sisters. And it's just so very tense. It's these characters end up being trapped in this house. They're constantly being attacked by all these ghosts, and then Joy starts to go crazy. And I think she really connects with Ellen Rimbauer. She's also dealing with a man who's putting her down and making her feel like she doesn't, like she's discrediting her, making her feel like her being that she's like ridiculous, like her beliefs are, he dismisses her beliefs and discredits her. And I think that's why she's an easy target for Ellen in the house. It's just so great, so fun and riveting, just a deep dive, and just so much and all the backstory is really interesting. And I almost keep thinking it's a dark academia, but it's really not, because there's no actual they are at a school at one point, at a college, doing studying this house. But I don't think it is dark academia. It's more of a haunted house story with with our one of our main characters being a teacher. But it's so great and so fun, and just it's just awesome. And what's really cool is on the DVD, there's actually a feature that's kind of set up like a documentary, as if the house really exists. And you have different people playing Stephen Rimbauer and Ellen and Joyce Reardon, like as if it's an actual scientific expedition. I think that's a really cool feature, and it's just it's so great. And the haunted house is so cool and so big, and and I really like how they make it very warm and inviting when you first go in there. There's, even though it's really big, it also still has a bit of a cozy atmosphere, which adds to the unsettledness of it, where it still feels cozy at times, but it's also overwhelmingly big. There's so much space. And it's just fantastic. Okay, I got 2 more things I want to show you that I think will be... Oh, wait, actually, no, I have 4 more things. First, before I talk about these, let me talk about the 2 other TV shows besides Are You Afraid of the Dark? So if you are Joss Whedon... So, I don't know if any of you guys are Joss Whedon fans, but... Oh, wait, this isn't the whole thing. I forgot. So, this is only season 6. So, first we have, I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show, is great to watch this time of year. Because, you have a teenage girl who's slaying vampires. So, I think you watch it any time of the year, and I will do that, but it's not too dark, but it still has some darkness to it, because you're dealing with teenagers fighting vampires, but it also has all these other monsters that she's fighting. So I think this is only season 6. But it deals with a lot of issues that teenagers have. It goes with a very metaphorical approach, but the later season 4 and onward, slowly gets more literal with some of the issues that our characters face. But I think it's a really great show to watch this time of year because what the plot is, Buffy's story is. But you probably want to start it early because there's 7 seasons and it still was one of those, and it still did the whole 22 episodes. Although I feel like I get through the episodes quickly because I can watch a lot of episodes in a night, in a day, and in the evening. But so I feel like if you watch more than 1 episode or more than 2 episodes within a day, within a few hours, then you could get through it quite a bit. And there are some Halloween episodes, or a few of the seasons do have some Halloween-esque episodes. I'm trying to think. This one includes the episode All the Way, and in that one, Buffy's sister who joined in season 4 or season 5. What is that? If you haven't watched, that is explained. But in season 5, she is, or in this season 6, she's, Buffy's kind of not with it right now. She's not involved. She's not very, taking an active role in their lives. They're, taking responsibility because their mom died. And she's, the one parental figure in her life that's still around is Giles, her mentor and, her watcher, as they call it. But Dawn ends up sneaking out on Halloween. They're the store that, sneak out on Halloween with her friend to meet a couple boys that end up being vampires. And I like how they set up this whole idea of this old creepy old man, and he might kill them, but then turns out, but the twist is that the vampire is actually the threat. And then Giles finds out that Dawn and her friend kind of did a little trick on her friend's mom and them, where she was like, "Oh, I'm staying at your house," or "I'm staying at your house." And Giles and Buffy are forced to find Dawn, and there's Buffy's forced to slay vampires, but then she lets Giles discipline Dawn. So it's fun, and now I personally prefer the season 2 Halloween episode where our characters are turned into their Halloween costumes. That one was really fun. It was kind of fun to see the characters acting like their Halloween costumes, like seeing Buffy act like a woman of the 1800s who's more of a damsel in distress. Xander is a soldier, which I personally think that was not a bad choice. He still got to be all badass and stuff in this costume, And then you have, and then Willow she was a ghost. So there's 7 seasons. So there was one more season after this one. That was a season where I had mixed feelings because there were episodes in the first part of the season that I really loved, that were really fun. But like everybody else, I did not like the potentials, because in season 7 we introduced the idea of Junior Slayers. I did like how they brought back the First, who was a bad guy that was introduced in season 3 when they tried to go after Buffy's true love, Angel, and tried to turn him evil again, or at least, kill himself. And they bring them back as a main threat in season 7, which I think makes sense, full circle. And so there were episodes of that season, but like I said, the other part of the season I didn't like as much. Or there were aspects of it I didn't like. But I enjoyed this season. I'm trying to think of season 3 or season... I always go back and forth between season 3 and season 5 as being a favorite. Because I liked the introduction of the sister being a magical object in the form of a human. But I really liked, and the bad guy was fun in that season, but I also loved the bad guy in season 3 and that whole arc. But so yeah, so sorry, this is not the whole thing. This is only season 6. I just grabbed it. Okay, and then the other show is a spin-off of Buffy. That one in the first season, they introduce Angel, who's the love of Buffy's life. He's a vampire with a soul. And he ends up getting, because him and Buffy can't truly be together. He is a vampire cursed, and if he is with a woman, not just any woman, he has to be with the love of his life, his true love. If he experiences basically true happiness, he will turn back and lose his soul and turn back into a monster. And so he eventually leaves Buffy in season 3, at the end of season 3, and gets a spin-off show where he's living in LA, and he's called to fight to protect the world from monsters. And there are 5 seasons. It was canceled after season 5, unfortunately. And there were some Buffy characters that came to this show, like Charisma Carpenter, who plays Cordelia Chase. She ends up coming to LA to be an actress, but does not succeed and do well, and she ends up being an assistant to Angel. And they end up having a romantic relationship. Well, or a potential romantic relationship. They mostly are just really good friends. But there was potential for romance, and which is really hard, because I was one of the people who actually shipped them together. I know a lot of people didn't, and I get people's reason why. But again, I think because our main character is a vampire, and you're dealing with other vampires and other kinds of monsters, I think this would also be really fun to watch this time of year. But I think it's a show you can watch any time of year as well. Both this one and Buffy, I think, are shows you can watch anytime you want. But I think it would be fun to watch these this time of year, because to binge the episodes, I think it's great. Now, this one does not have any Halloween inspired episodes, but not that I know of anyway. I watched the whole show, so I don't think I remember any Halloween inspired episodes. But it's just really fun. It's more of an adult show. Like, Buffy is more teenagers and young adults. This one is more adult. Like, you just left college. You're trying to figure your things out and what your role is in the adult world. And it gets a little more philosophical than violent compared to Buffy, I think. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about the last 2 movies. Okay, so first we have the other Halloween movie that does have to do with Halloween, and that is Sleepy Hollow, and they're classic. Now, I read the book by Washington Ivory, and I did like it. I was kind of disappointed by it. But I kind of knew that, because someone had explained. I think it might have been Terry who told me about it, how she heard, how, and now there are elements of the original short story that are in this book. Ichabod's personality is almost true to the original short story. He's less pompous in this movie. So, and he's not a teacher. He's not a school teacher. He is an inspector, and from the city, from New York City, and he is sent by his boss to go to the little town of Sleepy Hollow, which is upstate New York, because there has been a series of murders where someone has been cutting out the heads of these people. And he gets there, and it's a small town, a small little village town, and they know that it's more than just that. They believe their town is haunted by this headless horseman who was in life a German Hessian during the Revolution. And his head was blown off, I think, according to this version, and he's trying to look for a replacement head. And Constable Crane does not believe it. He does not believe in the supernatural. He's always there's a logical explanation for everything. And you find out that his mother was a witch, and that her believing in witchcraft and using witchcraft has got her condemned. And so that's part of why he doesn't, he's all about logic, and there's a reasonable explanation. There's no such thing as supernatural and all that. And he ends up having the town, the most important member of the town has a daughter, Katrina, and Ichabod ends up having a relationship with her, a romantic relationship with her. But this one guy, Abraham, who is in love with her, wants to be with her. There's a bit of a rivalry between the two of them, which is an aspect in the original short story. But what I like about this one is that, first of all the characters have more personalities. Even Brom, I think, has more of a personality. He's a bit of a hothead, and a bit reckless. And like I said, Ichabod is a little less pompous and arrogant. He's actually very shy and awkward at times. I mean, he's a little arrogant when it comes to what he does for a living, because he's very confident in that. But he's also very much but he's like not as like arrogant socially. And it's fun, and it has Tim Burton. Yes, it's a Tim Burton film. It has his signature elements, like the gothicness and the color scheme he always uses. Tim Burton always uses, and it's fun. Johnny Depp gets a lovable performance, and I really liked Christina Ricci. Although there could have been more development with that relationship, I feel like. But I think they just chose, as my friend Terry pointed out, they probably just chose to focus more on the horror elements rather than the romance. But I think they could have done a little bit more with the romance. Of course, it's a Tim Burton film, so maybe, I don't know, maybe he didn't want to. But I think they could have explored the romance a little bit more. Although Tim Burton has done some good romances in the past. But his romance do have a little bit of insta-loveness to them, I feel like. But don't watch it for that part. Watch it more for the fun and the scares, and the fact that it's a Sleepy Hollow story. And, like, it's a great read this time of year, and I mean, it's a great watch this time of year. I definitely recommend it. Okay, so the last one. Okay, if you know me, you know this is coming. This is a classic for me. Classic Tim Burton. It's the best. I have watched on repeat. I just re-downloaded the soundtrack to my iPod. I know this is one of the movies where I memorize it. I could probably, if I took the time, I could probably remember, recite the movie if I tried. It's just I just love it. I even have a little bit of crush on the main character. Was one of my first weird crushes, and I think really I'm just attracted to his personality and his singing voice. And of course, Tim Burton works with his composer, his best bud, although after this movie they kind of had fallen out, who does the singing voice of the main character, and I kind of have a little bit crush on him. And just, there's something special about this movie. And it's funny because when it first came out, not everybody loved it. It did not get well received, but now it essentially has a cult following. I mean, I loved it when it first came out. Like, I would perform the songs in my living room, standing on the furniture, although in private. I eventually one day bought the CD, so I have a copy of the CD. Yeah, I'm a 90s kid, so I had CDs and a Walkman, and I had, let me just go say it. Nightmare Before Christmas. And, you can watch this movie on Christmas time, because it is the Nightmare Before Christmas, so you can watch it all the way up until Christmas, I think. So, in case you have been living under a rock and don't know, or this is just not your thing, we have our main character, Jack Skellington. He is the king of the pumpkin king of Halloween Town. Every year they do this whole performance. That's how the movie starts. But then they do the same thing every year, and he's just so fed up with it. And then one day, he stumbles upon the holiday forest and finds himself into the land of Christmas Town, and he just falls in love with Christmas and decides to take it over that year and have Santa Claus kidnapped, or Sandy Claus, I should say, has him kidnapped and decides to become Santa himself. But Jack's Halloween spirit cannot just gets in the way of Christmas. Meanwhile, this female rag doll, Sally, has a crush on him. She is the adopted daughter of Dr. Finkelstein, or he's her creator. She's infatuated by Jack, and there was actually recently, I don't know if I'll read it yet, I might just get it, if it comes to my library, I might get it, or like, if I get on Libby, get an audiobook version. But they did a sequel where what happens after, and how she is the Pumpkin Queen now, but she's having trouble dealing with it, and then she accidentally stumbles upon the world of dreams in the Sandman, and she accidentally accidentally gets everyone put to sleep, including Jack. And she has to solve the problem. That's from reading the back. But it's just, so I don't know if I'm going to be interested. I would rather get it from the library, which, I should check now, but I'll check when we get back from our vacation, because we'll be going on our vacation soon. Decide to squeeze in one last vacation before summer's over. Not that it matters, because I'm not a student anymore. But I just love this movie. I can't explain it why. I just love it. And like I said, I would perform all the songs. I could probably memorize the movie, recite the movie. I will have deep discussions with myself about this movie. Like I said, I was infatuated by Jack, and I'm just obsessed. And I can't fathom, when I heard, because I started watching all these videos on YouTube about this movie, I couldn't fathom the fact that Tim Burton and Danny Elfman said that this movie was not well received when it first came out. And now it's only developed this cult following. Everyone is obsessed with it now. And there's so much Jack Skellington merch. I mean, like, let me show you. I can show you something. I have this. I have Jack Skeleton, those, I cannot remember what those shoes are. I have and the Jack Skeleton, those shoes that are like clogs, and I cannot remember what they're called, but they glow in the dark, which is really cool. And I have recently heard that there are, kids in my life, like a second cousin who was into Nightmare Before Christmas, and my nephew Harrison is into it. Has gone into it as well. Although my sister kind of wants him to not be obsessed with it all year round. I have 2 puzzles, and there's a third one I want to get. That just came out, has Jack Skeleton and Oogie Boogie on it. It has a red theme to it. And then you have but Crocs. I think they're Crocs. And then I think I almost got a t-shirt. But then I decided to, because I wanted to get the sweatshirt, I got this. And then I got the Hocus Pocus t-shirt instead. And I want to get the Funko Pops. Because I'm one of those people who collects Funko Pops. I know a lot of people, and I understand people's complaints about Funko Pops. Like, they're cheap. They can break easily if you're not careful, and they don't stand very well. They're not anything special or anything, but they're fun. I like collecting them. They're not that expensive, at least unless depending on which one you get, because there are versions that are a little more expensive. Like more than $12.99, but a lot of but generally speaking, most of them are like $12.99, or $9.99 or something. But yes, I had this on. I had a T-shirt, a Jack Skellington T-shirt, on my Amazon wish list, and I also had a hoodie. But I decided to. I thought about wearing it in my video, but you guys don't even really see my clothes unless I stand up. So, I just love Nightmare Before Christmas. I could talk about it for hours. I could do a whole video on Nightmare Before Christmas if I wanted to. Maybe I should try that this year. But anyway, in fact, Nightmare Before Christmas is probably when I found Seal the Deal for me and Tim Burton, when I became a fan of Tim Burton. And also it's one of his first top motion movies, which is really great, and a really cool animation style. But yes, Nightmare Before Christmas, definitely recommend you watch it, and it's something that you can watch all the way up until Christmas. But yes, it's a cult classic, another cult classic, and I definitely recommend it if you have not. But most people probably have. So those are my horror films, the ones I actually have, because there are a few others that I don't have that I still really enjoy. Like, there's this, there's one that I have like mixed feelings on, but I like, and that is the B horror movie Stitches. It's hilarious, but at the same time, it makes me like squeamish a little bit. Like, where it takes place, it's in Ireland, with Ross Noble plays this clown, and like he was at a kid's birthday party but then dies in a freak accident. And he takes revenge on the kids because they just mercilessly mocked him, maliciously mocked him, and I think they're the reason why he got killed. So he's brought back to life via his fellow clowns, and he seeks revenge on these kids and has the most creative way to kill them. And which, another thing about, I did tell you guys about this one, but it's funny. But for me personally, it's funny, but it also, creeps me out when I just thinking about it. But anyway, so those are some of my favorite horror things to watch. Now there are a couple other things that I like watching this time of year that aren't horror. So I don't know if I'll do a video about those. I might, but my next video will probably be about horror books. I don't know when I'll film that. I might be able to film that on the 3rd. And upload it then. Because I might be working, because I offered to work on the 1st and the 2nd. Because I'm not on the schedule that much this week. So I offered, like I said, I offered to work one of those days. But they might take me on both days. I don't know. I kind of hope not, but if I'm not gonna, I won't say no if they do. If they ask me if I can work both days, then I will. But anyway. So those are my favorite horror films, and like I said, at some point I will make a sequel to this and I'll do it soon, means I want to get it in by this month. All the horror books I've read so far, that aren't Stephen King, and then maybe I might do a Stephen King video, I don't know yet. But anyway, really mostly the video will probably be about all the Stephen King books I bought. Or maybe like showing you my Stephen King collection or something, I don't know. But anyway, if you guys like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified of my latest videos. And if you have a favorite horror book or movie, feel free to share in the comments below. I would love to hear what your favorite horror is to watch. Or if you're not a horror, what are some things you love to read and watch this time of year? Alright, bye!